Welcome to the new Workology Go Podcast. In just under 5 minutes, we'll get you the HR and workplace news you need before you start your day 2 times a week. Get ready, get set, and go with the new Workology Go Podcast.
Here are today's HR and workplace news headlines from the Workology Go Podcast. I'm Jessica Miller-Merrill. This podcast is sponsored by HSA Bank. Change is a habit. This is something that has really resonated with me since I finished up reading Mel Robbins' The 5-Second Rule, which I talked about in an earlier episode of the Workology Go podcast. Right now I'm reading Brené Brown's Dare to Lead, and I'm fascinated by her study of leadership and how to be a more intentional leader. I'm of the belief that change happens by being intentional with your everyday habits, hence why I loved Mel's 5-Second Rule. In order to change, you have to recognize that there is an area that you need to improve upon. It could be something like how you talk to an employee, a spouse, or a friend. We convince ourselves that this way we've talked to someone is just something we've always done, when in fact those behaviors have been taught. And once we learned them, we've practiced them, we've honed them, and we have forgot that we were taught how to do them at all. They become part of who we are, and they become a habit. And the idea from both Mel and Brené's books has been on my mind. So earlier this week, I came across an article in my LinkedIn feed titled, Why Neuroleadership is Moving from Leadership to Change to Culture and Leadership. In the article, the author mentions the following. Culture is shared by everyday habits. Even a culture is an intentional habit, and the only way to change a habit is to rewire your brain. But it's not just your brain that you are rewiring. You are rewiring everyone in your company when it comes to a cultural shift and workplace change. So last week, I was talking to an HR leader who told me that he and his team were moving away from an AS400 system. Can you believe that? In the office, and they're moving to a shiny and new HR technology for all employees. And this is happening super fast, mid-July. He asked me how I would help people and make them assimilate to the new technology, which is better and faster. But they have to move quickly because July 15th is right around the corner. And I was reminded by a podcast interview I did with neuroleadership expert Britt Andretta.
And if you design learning for other people, including as a manager or a parent or a healthcare worker or a teacher, it gives you some tips about how to create better learning for others. And then on the change one, I really wrote it on 3 levels. One is for, I call them expedition designers. They're the people, because the whole metaphor I use is that we're on a change journey. It's not an event, it's a journey. So there's the expedition designers. These are the leaders who decide that a change is needed, and they do a lot of the designing of the change. And then you've got guides, which are the managers who are kind of handed a change, saying, you got to get your people through this, and here you go. So tools for them on how to guide a team through successful change. And then people who are going through the actual change themselves are what I call the travelers. They're traveling on that journey. And all of us end up travelers at some point. Even if you're the CEO of a company, at some point somebody dictates a change to you that you may or may not be on board for. So absolutely, we can, as individuals, take more responsibility for how we move through change, and even compensating for having poor guides or less than effective managers or supervisors. We can do a lot to compensate for that in empowering ourselves to be successful through change.
A lot of the questions and conversations that I tend to have with some of the listeners of the podcast and readers from the blog is, how do I take these ideas or this idea that I have and get my CEO to be okay and comfortable with this new change? Or how do I get the seat with the executive team to be able to make an impact like I would love to be able to? And it sounds like to me that your book provides some guidance and really great insights in how to help accomplish that.
I loved my interview with Brett, and while I was talking to that HR guy, my mind immediately went to that interview. And I asked him how long it had been since they made the announcement about moving to the new HR system to the employees. He told me it had just been a couple weeks. And then I asked him how long it had been since he knew about the change that would be happening. This HR leader is what Britt calls an expedition designer in her interview that you just listened to. He's been able to marinate and work through this tech change for a long time, compared to his employees who just had a couple weeks to move through and understand and marinate on a massive change. We really need to think about the time it takes for employees to understand, absorb, and accept any type of change, so we will make it a habit. If we really want them to stick with it, whether it's a new program or HR technology, or just a change to the employee culture, or it could be just a policy change or a communication. I hope this gives you pause when you think about the new change you have in your organization, giving yourself a chance to marinate and time, information, and communication, not just for you, but for your employees. You want to help them be able to move forward and make that change into a habit for them.
With health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, health reimbursement arrangements, COBRA, and commuter benefits, HSA Bank is simplifying the health account experience for over 35,000 employers and 2.7 million members alike, inspiring everyone to own their health. Learn more at hsabank.com.
And that's this episode of the Workology Go podcast, sponsored by HSA Bank. We're your go-to for HR and workplace news. I'm Jessica Miller Merrill. Thank you for listening.
To learn more about the Workology Go podcast, subscribe to us on Apple, Google, and Stitcher. Our podcast is also available on Alexa and Google Home. Learn more at workology.com/Go podcast and access this episode's resources, links, and reports for more information.